like write that on a list, and he put down everything, and then he looked at that list and like kind of looked at what kind of careers and jobs and just like whatever was out there, and whatever job like best fit that list was what he ended up pursuing and working towards. And I just thought that was such a great example of kind of like how you can figure that out for yourself.
All right, welcome back to Meeting Virginia, the best podcast in Northern Virginia, maybe next to my guest's podcast, maybe. We'll see. But I'm super stoked to have the current guest here today. Looking forward to hearing more of her story and learning more about her podcast and more about what she's going to do in the future. Miss Yashna, how are you today?
I am great, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm so excited to share whatever I can.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I kind of, before we, I guess, talk about you and kind of what you're up to and what your plans are, for anyone listening and watching, I did just want to ask if you could kind of give a brief synopsis about yourself, a little short story about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of my background is that I'm currently working as a software developer, but previously I went to undergrad at William & Mary, where I studied biology, and I took kind of like a 360 in my career and ended up in software development, and kind of to take that to another 360. I'm hoping the future will lead to me being a life coach. So it's kind of a little bit about my journey so far.
Cool. And yeah, like we talked about this before the camera started rolling, but I do want to talk to you more about that transition, because that's I feel like even going from like computer science and biology to like life coaching, they're very different in a good way, which is cool. So I want to talk about that. I do want to start though. So you have your own podcast, you and a co-host. I did want to kind of ask a little bit about, I guess, the premise of the podcast and kind of what made you start that.
Yeah. So I have a podcast with a good friend of mine called The Vision Factor, and kind of how it came into being was in undergrad I decided to pursue biology, but then I realized once I had graduated that working and being in school is completely different. Yeah. And it was kind of a big shock, and I was like, wait, what is going on here? So during that like phase of my life, I was kind of like realizing that I didn't actually like the work I was doing in biology, and that's when I decided to kind of like explore and see what else was out there. And while I was doing that, I was seeing all these like really cool people that I really liked their like careers and what they were doing, but I kind of didn't know how I could manifest that into my life. So I thought like, hey, like what if I got to like talk to these people? And I thought it might be helpful for other people to also hear the journey that people had to their success. So that's when I decided to like reach out to one of my friends and we're like, hey, like what if we started a podcast together, and kind of like got to interview like a bunch of cool people and see what their story is and their life journey and kind of what led them to the success they have right now. So that's kind of like what the premise of our podcast is that we uncover stories of success for specifically Indian Americans.
Okay. All right. Nice. I'm curious, was there like a specific moment or maybe a few moments where you graduated and you're working and you're like, this sucks? Like, this is not what they promised.
Completely. I was like, in like school, we're so focused on just like learning, like especially in biology, we're just so focused on learning so many facts. It's all like very fact oriented, and like we need to just know a bunch of like random things. But when you kind of like are working in the field, like I worked as a medical assistant for like 6 months, and when you're working, all of that is not as useful as like having practical experience, like doing things, you know, like doing
Yeah.
procedures, or like actually working with patients. And that's when I realized, like, this is a completely different ball game. And I was like, and I didn't feel like that was like really pulling on my strengths as a person. And that's when I was just like, oh, like this just kind of sucks, you know. Like, I worked 4 years so hard to get this biology degree, and here I am, like, working as what I thought would be like my dream career, like,
Yeah.
and I don't like a bit of it. So
Yeah. No, we kind of talked a little bit about this the other day when we got coffee, but I've had that happen as well. And I don't know if I told you, I was a crim major. I was trying to go to law school in Georgetown. That's why I moved here, actually.
Yeah.
But I remember, just to kind of talk a little bit about, sometimes college doesn't bring up certain things. I remember my senior year of crim. I was taking crim, and I had this one class about how, I think it was like organization in law, and it was about how lawyers function in the law and how police officers function and how they work together, and the different like how the cohesion is, and just little things. And it was taught by a police officer, so he was giving his opinions based on his actual experience, which was cool. And I remember we saw this documentary, and it was about how police officers go through like really bad depression. And it was also about how like lawyers, because they're incentivized to win, sometimes there's some things that they do as far as like with judges and amongst other lawyers, that's not always pro justice, but it's pro winning for the sake of profit. And in my head, I was like, this should be taught freshman year, not senior year, like after we've gone through years. So I completely understand, like, you have a certain expectation, then you get to the field and you're actually working.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, that's completely it. It's like some things are missing, and once you actually are doing like what you think this is, and it's like, this is not what I thought it was going to be like, or like, I wish this was told to me earlier, like in your case, right? Yeah.
I always feel like there should be like some kind of, maybe there is one, like an app or like something where you go to college and you're like, I want to be like a doctor or lawyer, engineer, and they're like, this is exactly what it's like to do this job from the start of your day to the end of your day. This is what the job looks like almost like a day in the life type of video, but for each potential career, if that makes sense.
No, I completely agree on that. And I think a part of it also is kind of like, I feel like life is kind of like a journey in my head, right? So it's kind of like, at maybe like that phase of life, like suppose you're in college or high school, like it's kind of hard to know what you want to do with the rest of your life. You know, it seems like such a daunting thing. And like at that age, I think it seems like once you pick something, this is kind of like what you have to do, or like that's kind of like what my mindset was. And coming into the workplace, I was definitely like kind of shocked at like how that's definitely not the case. Like, people move around a lot, try different things like a lot, and it's not like you're really signing off your life when you're like that young. So I think that's like also kind of an interesting thing, is that like at that age we're kind of like chose to like pick one major. Like, I think it's hard to define like what you want to do in just like a major at times too, you know?
Yeah, that's always like a weird thing to me too. Like, you're like 17 or 18 and there's so much pressure to pick what you believe is the one thing that you'll do forever. It's like, up until this point, at least for me, I don't know about you or for other people. For me, I was like, age of 17, 18, I haven't had to make any big decisions. Like, literally none.
Exactly.
Now it's like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, I don't even know what I want to do tomorrow. Like, I barely know what I want to do.
Completely. Like, I don't even know what I want to eat for the next meal that I'm going to eat, you know? Like,
yeah, so it's so interesting. But I also want to ask just about the podcast. Were there any stories that any of the guests told that really stand out, or is like super, I'm sure they all have great stories, but are there any that are like so unique where it's like wow, this is interesting, like it made you think? I don't know if you've had any like that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think definitely each story that we've had, everyone had parts of that in their experience. Like, definitely, I think everyone's story is so unique. But I think one that really stood out to me, because not that I had a similar journey, but I like kind of had a similar journey as this person, so I could feel kind of what they had been through. But we had this guest named Manish Goyal, and he currently owns a restaurant. But back in like college, he was a biology, like pre-med. He was in the pre-med track. So he's supposed to be like going to like become a doctor and all that.
Yeah.
And evidently, as he has a restaurant, that did not happen. But I think it was just that like once he realized that like this was like not what he wanted, it's very interesting to see how he explained like his journey to figuring out what he wanted to do. Because I feel like I've felt this at times where like it's like you realize you don't want to do something, but then it's kind of like how do you get to figuring out what you do want to do, right? Like that's a journey on its own. So I think it was very interesting that he explained kind of like his journey for that, and it was like he really took the time to just kind of like literally just write down everything he enjoyed, like no restrictions, nothing, just like it could be the stupidest thing ever, and he just like would completely like not judge himself for it and just like write that on a list, and he put down everything, and then he looked at that list and like kind of looked at what kind of careers and jobs and just like whatever was out there, and whatever job like best fit that list was what he ended up pursuing and working towards. And I just thought that was such a great example of kind of like how you can figure that out for yourself.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting actually. That's pretty cool. I feel like that's an exercise most people don't get the opportunity to do just because they're so focused on trying to get into whatever career they thought they needed to get into or something like that. That's a pretty interesting exercise to just sit there and think of like everything you want to do and then see what makes sense.
Yeah, like everything you enjoy doing just in general too. Just like it could be as simple as like, I don't know, like for me, like I enjoy dancing, like how could I can incorporate that in like somehow my future career, you know? Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't see now you're bringing up dancing. Now I gotta ask you about when you say dancing, I'm thinking about, because you brought up life coaching. I saw this TikToker and all of her TikToks, at least the ones I've seen, they're all her dancing. I won't say it's like super, I guess, technical, like she's not doing like any crazy dances that are hard to replicate, but it's just like her moving so much, you're instantly drawn to watch the video, but it's all like political stuff. So I don't know, I'm just thinking about you saying dancing is something you enjoy, but then you can combine it to
completely it. That's actually like in my head, that's what I plan to do, is just like in terms of life coaching, I want to be like posting content related to life coaching, but I want to be doing like dance steps in it, so it like kind of attracts people, like exactly what you're saying. So that's kind of like what I meant by like, you know, like finding different things that you enjoy doing and like incorporating it.
You know, I think that's a good way to go about it too, just because it's automatically unique, if that makes sense. Like, I think sometimes people try to replicate too much what other people are doing. And I feel like if you're just taking things that you like and then combining them, you're always unique in the marketplace, so to speak.
Yeah.
If that makes sense at all.
No, I completely see what you're saying. It's kind of like being your authentic self and not like someone else's authentic self, like being like who you are and like what you enjoy. And like I feel like everyone enjoys different things, so you'll be kind of unique to yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna ask you more. I'm just curious, what kind of dancing do you do? So I'm Indian. That's why we interview Indian Americans on the podcast. So I do a lot of like cultural like dances specific to like Indian culture. So like that's like Bollywood, Bhangra. Not sure if you're familiar with any of those. I know the Bollywood. Yeah. Not the, what's the second one called? Bhangra. Yeah. I'm not familiar with that. Gotcha. Interesting. So I do want to ask you this too as well, because when we talked a few days ago, you mentioned you went to a competitive high school and that you also did computer science. And I wanted to ask first, it was in high school that you first liked
computer science, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, spot on. That's exactly it.
Okay. I was curious to know, 'cause you may have, I think you did tell me, but I just want to kind of remember again.
Yeah.
What made you get into computer science in high school? Because I feel like that's a very, I feel like a lot of guys get drawn to it for a variety of reasons. So it's always interesting when I see girls. It's like engineering too. Like when I see a girl want to do it, I'm always like, that's cool. What makes you want to do it compared to this guy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I, like, as you mentioned, I went to a really competitive high school. So if you're from the Northern Virginia area, you're probably familiar with it. If you grew up here, it's called Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. So it has a very big focus on science and tech. So like they give you a lot of opportunities to kind of really explore science and tech, but to like kind of the modern day age of like what's happening. So it's like we get to be part of like really cool labs and take classes that most people would take much later in their life, beyond high school. So like college. So from that, I think that's what kind of allowed me to kind of get exposure to computer science, because I feel like there were so many computer science classes offered at that high school. And like, I mean, just comparing to like, I have a younger sister and like I've seen her like course list and stuff. Like there's definitely computer science classes, but I think like the degree at which they were available at the school I went to was just tremendous. And like those kind of opportunities and that kind of exposure, I think really helped me kind of like see the field. Like I feel like if I didn't know much about it, I probably might not have pursued it, but having that exposure and having those like really cool lab experiences, we got to do like really cool research, and like I remember one of my labs we did like we worked with virtual reality, so it's like cool. it was really cool. So things like that like really gave me exposure, and I think that's when I was just like, wow, this is such a amazing field. And I'm very like mathematical and very like organized that way, so it's just like computer science is kind of very logical and just that's how it works, so it just fit right naturally into like what I was good at.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's I'm curious because you brought up virtual reality. Are you familiar with the metaverse, kind of like Mark Zuckerberg's meta thing? Yeah. I'm curious to know your thoughts on it, if you've thought much about it or anything like that. Or
yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I think there's a lot of controversy over it for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting concept. I think it kind of has two sides to it in my head, at least, is like, I think the beauty of technology in the sense that like the fact that something like that can even exist in our day and age, I think, or like the future is just like, I think really cool. And like the fact that we can make something like that a reality is just shows the progression of how much tech has advanced in the time that it's been existent.
Yeah.
But I think also there's a component, at least to me, that's kind of a component of it being kind of scary, like that can exist too, you know? Like it's almost like it's like its own world practically, you know? You could be like, it almost seems like you could be sucked into that and like really into it, kind of like tech now. Like we're so caught up in our phones, and like you could really be living a completely different life on your phone versus like, or your laptop versus like real life, you know? It's like completely different. So the idea that like you're kind of living multiple lives is kind of scary to me. Yeah,
definitely. I get scared that people are gonna opt for the metaverse over the real verse, so to speak. Have you ever tried like, I guess you may have tried it when you were in high school, but have you played like any of the VR games or been like in the VR headset thing for, I guess, an extended period of time at all?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been with one of the headsets for an extended period of time. I've definitely played like the games on like, I think it's called the Oculus and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've definitely played like Fruit Ninja on it and like games like that, which I thought that were so cool because it definitely feels like real and like very like much like you probably like, if you didn't know you were wearing a headset, like you would think that's like real life.
Yeah. That's what scares me.
Yeah.
I know, just really random. I went to, I think we were in Ocean City, me and a few friends, and they had like a booth. I shouldn't say booth. It was sort of like on the boardwalk, they had like a little room type store thing you can go into, and you can pay. It's like an arcade, but it was only VR, and you can pay to do the VR headset thing. And I played this game called, I think it's called Super Hot, and it's just like, it's almost like freeze tag, where like if you're standing still, you can move around, but you can't move your character. And whenever you move your character, the world moves as well.
Oh wow.
But it's creepy because it's a shooting game, so you'll see people like all over, and you're like, grab the gun, you try to plan out like where you're gonna shoot, but the moment you go to like pull the trigger, everything starts moving.
Oh my god.
And I remember some of the settings are like up high on like a skyscraper. You feel like you're high up, even though like logically okay, I'm in a room, nothing, like I can't fall, but because I guess your senses see height, like that you're up high, or you can hear, just it's weird. It's so immersive that it almost takes over your brain in a weird way, if that makes sense. Like it fools your brain into believing you're someplace where you're really not. So I get scared with the metaverse that someone's going to be in it too long and they're going to forget about reality and starve, or I don't know. It's something crazy.
No, it's a completely fair point. Like, I mean, it is so immersive, and like it does feel like completely real. Like if you aren't like conscious of like how long you're on it, you could probably get caught up there for like a long time. I think one thing I recently like saw somewhere, which I thought was actually kind of cool, was that like they're like trying to use these like VR sets to kind of like simulate, like for like example, for like pilots that are driving, or like flying, they can kind of like simulate like what it would be like to do it without like the risk of kind of like being in the air and doing that. So I think in that way it seems like it could definitely be like very beneficial in terms of like simulating things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's pretty cool actually. See, now I'm gonna think all day about like VR and all the different uses of it. So I do want to talk as well. I do want to bring up, you mentioned that you're getting into life coaching, and I wanted to ask first, what makes you want to go from computers to life coaching? Just because they're both cool and they're both interesting, but they're both in my opinion very different. So to me, that's an interesting jump from computers and biology to life coaching.
No, I completely hear you there. It is a complete 360. And definitely the life coaching part is still in the works. But I think the reason why I wanted to make the switch is, I think roughly like a year ago, I really was like exposed a lot more to like what life coaching was and like what coaches do. And I feel like when I was going through like a rough phase in my life where I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I feel like I didn't really know the clarity of that, and I was like really confused, and like these life coaching like sessions and just like people that kind of like post content about that really helped me get a lot of clarity and like really helped me guide my life. And since then, I've always in like the back of my head been like, hey, like this would be so cool to do, just because I feel like it could have such a big impact on people's lives. Like I feel like to help someone through like a rough phase in their journey can just like be very meaningful. So that's kind of like when I realized that this might be something I wanted to do. But then I started working in tech, and I was like, I want to give this a try too. So I was like, let me explore, try it out, and see what it's like. And now, having been in tech for like a year, I think what I realized was that tech is amazing. You can definitely do so much. And we were talking about this. It allows for a lot of flexibility. Yeah. Like in terms of like working remote and kind of like not having to be in one location. It like makes things a lot easier and is very flexible. So I love that aspect of it. But in terms of like just direct impact of the work I'm doing day to day, like I couldn't really feel that. Like I didn't really feel like what I was doing was like making significant enough of an impact in someone's life. And I know like I'm a recent grad, so it's like kind of hard to find a job that really has that significant of an impact if you're looking like in corporate. Like I currently work in corporate. So that's also like a part of it. But I think now that it's been a year and I'm realizing that, I'm like, wait, like I really want to do something that has a greater impact. Like we have one life to live. Like I want to really be doing the best I can while I'm in this world and alive. So then that's when I was just like, recently is when I was like, I've been talking about like potentially doing this or thinking about it, but I think the biggest key to like doing something is action. And like once you don't actually take action towards it, it's kind of always just a dream or a thought. And then recently I was like, no, I have to like do this. I need to like pursue what I want to do. And like so I'm currently doing like a certification. It's through the Jay Shetty certification school. Okay. So I'm currently in the process of that, slowly building my skills to be a future life coach.
That's pretty cool. I'm curious. You don't have to say too much about the program. I know of Jay Shetty. He funny enough, he doesn't pop up on my YouTube algorithm now that you mention it.
Oh, really?
I was going to say, like, I used to watch a lot of Jay Shetty, and I don't know why I don't. I was like, YouTube doesn't show him. That's why I don't watch him anymore. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but I'm curious to know, like, what... Because he used to be, if I remember correctly, he used to be a monk. I forget how long, but for a good I think few years, I thought, or something like that. Yeah, a couple of years, I'm
pretty sure, too. Yeah.
So, which to me, when I first heard that story, was interesting, because I don't know if he was, I don't remember the entire story. I thought he was in college, or maybe he had graduated and he was in the corporate world, then became a monk. And I thought he gave up like all his stuff for a bit and shaved his head and everything.
Yeah.
And then came back to not the corporate world, but had a different message about life and making money, which to me is cool, because you always hear about making money and success from the perspective of kind of like materialism. Almost like, oh, this guy's a big house, this guy's he's a lawyer, or he's a certain type of whatever career, he's successful, or she's successful, whatever. But he kind of teaches more of like a holistic approach to life, and having friends, family, all this stuff. So I don't know, without me rambling too much, I'm curious to know, I guess, what his program talks about, whatever you're willing to share, just because I feel like he'd come at it from a different perspective than most people would.
I think I'm also like very new to this program, just awareness also. So
and I did put you on the spot, so I do feel bad.
No. And I would love to completely share as my experience so far, though. But I couldn't give you like a full encompassed like observation. But so far, I think just also like the people involved with the coaching, like the program that I'm doing, they're very like much up on his ideals and what kind of he does. So they're all very well trained and like kind of all have the same ideology. And the thing I really like about the program is that it's kind of like, honestly, it feels like you're going through like school. Like there's literally an exam like at the end to let you have to like pass, which I think is honestly a beautiful concept in this case, just because I think their real focus is like trying to build like strong life coaches. Like they want people who are going to like go out in the world and like be able to do life coaching like to the best of their ability and like help people, right? So it's like that idea of just like really focusing more on the coaching and the teachings and how you're going to help people and help your clients versus like having a big focus on the business side. Like, yes, I think that's like a natural thing that comes up, but I think their very big focus first is that to make sure that you are like prepared for it and like know how to help people. So I think in that perspective, I think he does like a really good job, just because I had been scouting around a bit at like other programs for certifications for life coaching, and you can definitely see, at least in my opinion, like a difference, just because I think every program has its different intentions, but I think this one just seems very pure and just very much like trying to build people who can have like a positive impact in the world, and like people at like a one-on-one level too. Yeah,
he's focusing more on the value component over the how do I monetize or how do I build a business component. is what it sounds like. It.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the right spot.
Which is better. I think that's the way. It's probably the better. Well, I shouldn't say probably. I'm sure that's the better way to go about it. Build the value first, and then if you need to make money from it, or if you want to make money from it, then that'll get it done.
Yeah. I think that's what I really liked about it too, because like, yeah, like, I mean, naturally, a lot of people that are trying to build this as like a full-time thing would want to care about the money aspect. You need to like provide for yourself, right? But I think it's also like important to like have that secondary, in a sense of like, first, like, make sure this is the right path for you too, or like make sure that this is something like that is a good fit for you. And then like, I think building a business is definitely a component to it, but I think once you're sure about it, it'll naturally just work out. Yeah.
I'm curious to ask, have you had any, I guess, pushback on going from computer science to life coaching? And I ask just because I know for myself, when I graduated, I wanted to go to law school. I thought I wanted to go to law school. And that's why I moved down here. I was going to go to Georgetown, and I ended up not going. And I remember when I said that I wanted to get into real estate or try other things, people were like, "What are you doing trying to transfer? You spent all that time in college doing this. You're not going to go to law school. You took the LSATs and all this stuff." And I'm like, well, it's not for me. I don't think I feel it. So I'm just curious to know if you got any pushback at all, or I don't know, just because I imagine like computer science in someone's head sounds more, especially if it's like an older generation or maybe just people who don't know much about life coaching or what that could be. They're probably thinking, oh, well, this is stable, secure, 401k, whatever. And then I imagine for life coaching, it's some people are going to think, oh, it's a business. Business is hard. Why would you do something that's hard? Or they're going to say, I don't really understand what life coaching is when I just stick to computer science or biology,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was a very long question, but I'm just curious. And maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, that's definitely like a good point, because like I anticipate on that happening, because life coaching, like this whole journey is still relatively new to me, in the sense of like it's always been in my head, but the practicality of me doing it is still brand new. Like I'm still doing my corporate job, so I feel like people haven't like really sat in the sense that like, hey, like she's associating herself as a life coach yet.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I haven't gotten too much pushback. And I think especially, I think I was a little scared on my family side, because I think those were the people that I told the first that I was like, hey, like I'm like investing myself in this and I'm gonna be doing this. I think I was lucky in the sense that my parents were really supportive. Honestly, more sure about it than I was. Like, I think I definitely had a component of like, I'm not completely sure about this. Like, I feel like this is the next step in my life, but like also like it's a big step. So it's like kind of like daunting in that sense. But I think I'm so lucky that my parents were so supportive, and really were like, I think since to them I've been talking about it for the past year, like they knew that I'd been wanting to do this, and they could see like that passion and drive in me. So I think they were like, this is something you want to do, and we want to see you like follow your dreams and do it. But I think kind of getting more at your question of like pushback, I think I felt that more kind of when I had that degree in biology, and I was supposed to be working kind of in the bio field, and then I went into tech, like a kind of 360 right before that too. I definitely felt that kind of pushback there at times, like, and maybe it was kind of a bit more like me myself also just kind of like feeling it more than maybe the other person was like kind of expressing it, because I feel like sometimes we get in our head about like, hey, like I'm making this 360 switch, like will people think it's weird, or like what will other people think, and like that kind of can like hold you back at times. And I definitely felt that then. I think I was just like, wow, I just spent like 4 years like getting a degree in biology, and here I am like back at computer science. Like what is going on? Like I don't understand what's happening in my life. Like I'm a very planned like type A person. So I was just kind of like, wait, what is going on? So at that time I definitely like, even telling like friends, and like even like not my immediate family, but like beyond that, like I was nervous. Like I would like very much try to like avoid the topic, just be like, I'm figuring it out, like I don't know, like I don't know if you felt this, but I just like, I feel like sometimes it's even harder to tell people that are closer to you than
Yes,
like
yeah.
random people, because like, I don't know, I feel like they associate like a version of you in their head, and like, you know, they think of you that way, and then to like completely change that, I don't know why, like it's just, it's weird, it's like scary.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes the people closest to you, they don't want you, no, not in a negative way, but like I feel like it's just so familiar to them. When you start to deviate from what's familiar, they're just like what are you doing? What's going on? Why are you being different than I've known you to be all this time? But I've had that, and I'm sure I'm going to keep having that because I'm weird and I always do 1,000 different things.
Hey, same here. Like.
So you're going to feel it for the next X amount of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's pretty cool though. That's good. And one thing that's cool about it to me is that I think most people, I shouldn't say most, I feel like a lot of people, they want to do, I think, what you're doing. As far as like they're in a career or they're doing something now, and they might in the back of their head go, you know, this is cool, or I like it, or, you know, I know what to expect, but I want to try something new. And I think a lot of people might be too afraid to step out of that comfort zone and try something new, which to me is the better option, to be uncomfortable, because at least you learn about yourself at the end.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I think it's cool that you're doing that, because I think most people probably deep down want to do it, but they aren't going to take those steps to do it, because it's tough and uncomfortable and difficult.
Exactly. No, it is very uncomfortable, and I'm going to be honest too, like it hasn't been like a smooth ride through all of this. Like I've definitely been like, sometimes I even question myself, and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? You know, like, so it's definitely not easy, but I think the idea of like being comfortable with the uncomfortable, because like technically everything that is really worthy in life is kind of going to be uncomfortable. You know, like it's like all the challenges and all the like hard things you face actually like build you into like who you are, and like are what make life worthy of like living it, you know, and like you really learn to like appreciate those things. So yeah, I totally get it though. Like I think if I had not made that switch when I had that degree in biology and then moved into tech, I think this switch would have been way harder. But I think since I did that once, I felt confident enough that I would like be able to figure it out. I think it's also like a component of life of just being able to like figure it out, you know, like knowing that like, hey, I don't know what the next step is, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but like I know that I have the ability to like problem solve, and I'll figure it out, you know.
Yeah, that's good that you have the confidence to kind of just be like, I'll figure it out, no matter what happens, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a big component of why people might not even attempt something new. Like they're like, I don't know if I can actually pull off this thing that I want to do. So
yeah, and I think a part of it is also kind of like I don't think I was always like this. A part of it is just kind of being like confidence. I think in terms of like having that kind of confidence to say something like that is just kind of like almost like fake it till you make it to a degree, where it's like I can't for sure, like I feel like deep down maybe I for sure also don't know, but like if I keep telling myself like, hey, I can do it, or like that, like I think eventually like you'll figure it out, you know.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Sometimes I hear like people like Warren Buffett or some of these guys who are like successful or super like rich or famous. People ask them, did you know you'd be rich or successful or famous? And they almost always say, yeah, I knew. And part of me loves that. Part of me also feels like it's almost always a false answer, because you can't. Maybe I'm just weird. Part of me is like, you can't technically know you're going to be rich and famous until after you've become rich and famous.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, you have to almost be, I'm going to call it optimistically delusional.
Yeah.
Until you get it, you have to kind of like in the back of your head be like, I'm the man, or I'm the girl, or the chick, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it. And then once you make it, you're like, see, I always knew I was going to make it. It's technically you didn't know because it hasn't happened. But
no, you're right. Like definitely you never know like the sequence of events, like how you obviously like no one can predict the future, but like definitely I think there's a component of it of like maybe like you didn't know your whole life, but I think like maybe like a couple years before you were gonna be like, it was kind of like coming up, you could probably be like kind of like manifesting it in your life, which is like, I see this vision for my life and it's gonna happen. And I feel like if you tell that to yourself enough, like it does manifest. And I do it to myself too all the time, where like I'm like, oh, I already know I'm gonna do this, and then in the back of my head I'm like, you don't really know because you haven't done it yet. And it's like, shh, no, it's already happened. Don't exactly.
It's happened. It hasn't caught up yet.
It's kind of like tricking the brain almost, because like sometimes your brain will be like, wait, but you're like, no, trust me. Like
But no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing you as one of the best life coaches in Loudoun County, at the very least, but in the country.
Thank you so much. That's very, very nice of you.
Well, I'm curious, was there anything else that I did not bring up that you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, I think you touched everything. I think there wasn't a single spot that was really missed. Didn't know we were going to end up talking about virtual reality on this.
If you that's a rabbit hole that would be at least another 5-hour conversation, because that's a rabbit hole I would totally get into.
No, but I love like natural conversations like that, you know, like I think we touched all the core things, but like definitely I love like talking about random things as well, so.
Cool. There's one more question I was going to ask, and now I forgot what it was, and now I'm upset. I know. Or I should say, I always ask people, in the next 5 years, where do you see yourself?
Great question. Well, based on the conversation we've been having, I see myself as a life coach, just really wanting to have an impact in the world, but on a level that's like kind of just like, I feel like I see, sometimes it's hard to see like kind of today, day and age, how the world operates. I feel like there's a lot of hate, a lot of like lack of acceptance of people, and just like a bunch of like things that make it so hard for people to live on a day-to-day, and have brought a lot of like anxiety and fear and just a lot of these emotions that I think can really be countered by the acts of love. So I just want to like help people love themselves, love other people, and just live a life that's unique and beautiful to them. So yeah.
I like it. Well, for anyone listening and watching, where can they find you after this video? Yeah,
so my personal Instagram is at YASHNA VERMA 1, so you can check me out there, and you can also see our podcast, The Vision Factor, which is at The Vision Factor Podcast on Instagram as well.
Okay, cool. And is there any final remarks, any last words before we close out the episode?
Yeah, I think I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out and having me on this podcast. I think it's always so nice to talk to people, and it's really been great, like even hearing about your journey and your story. And I'm glad we could relate on something, especially the career journey part. But yeah, it's just been incredible talking, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, absolutely, no problem. Hopefully I get to have you back on the show sooner than later once you're a life coach and you're killing it.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, I hope you all had a great time listening to this episode. I appreciate Yashna for coming on. Please like the video and share it if you like the episode, and definitely go check out her podcast and all of her content. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Peace out.